Senator Durbin.
Thank you, Senator Grassley. Ms. Bondi, at issue, I believe, in this nomination hearing is not your competence nor your experience. At issue is your ability to say no. More than any other cabinet official, the Attorney General has to be prepared to put the Constitution first and even tell the President of the United States you're wrong. The political danger and personal costs of such a decision are well documented. You have only to ask former Attorney General Jeff Sessions and Bill Barr, whom Donald Trump sacked for lack of loyalty. And so I have three basic questions I'd like to ask you. Most Americans believe that central to the peaceful transition of power in a democracy is the acceptance of the results of an election. To my knowledge, Donald Trump has never acknowledged the legal results of the 2020 election. Are you prepared to say today under oath without reservation that Donald Trump lost the presidential contest to Joe Biden in 2020?
Ranking Member Durbin, President Biden is the President of the United States. He was duly sworn in, and he is the President of the United States. There was a peaceful transition of power. President Trump left office and was overwhelmingly elected in 2024.
Do you have any doubts that Joe Biden had the majority of votes, electoral votes, necessary to be elected president in 2020?
You know, Senator, all I can tell you as a prosecutor is from my firsthand experience. And I accept the results. I accept, of course, that Joe Biden is president of the United States. But what I can tell you is what I saw firsthand when I went to Pennsylvania as an advocate for the campaign. I was an advocate for the campaign, and I was on the ground in Pennsylvania, and I saw many things there. But do I accept the results? Of course I do. Do I agree with what happened? And I saw so much. You know, no one from either side of the aisle should want there to be any issues with election integrity in our country. We should all want our elections to be free and fair, and the rules and the laws to be followed.
I think that question deserved a yes or no, and I think the length of your answer is an indication that you weren't prepared to answer yes. Have you heard the recording of President Trump on January 2nd, 2021, when he urged the Secretary of State of Georgia to, quote, find 11,780 votes and declare him the winner of that state?
No, I've heard about it through clips, but no, Senator, I've not heard it.
What was your reaction to President Trump making that call?
I would have to listen to the tape, Senator.
Well, the quote that I give you is exact. He said to the Georgia Secretary of State, find 11,780 votes.
Do you have the entire context of that call? I feel like it was much longer than that and may have been taken out of context.
It was an hour long.
Right.
And you can certainly listen to it. I hope you will. Every American should. As a former prosecutor, are you not concerned that the President of the United States called a state election official and asked him to find enough votes to change the results of the election?
Senator, I have not listened to the hour-long conversation, but it's my understanding that is not what he asked.
Listen to it. Let me ask a third question. Do you believe that the January 6 rioters who've been convicted of violent assaults on police officers should be pardoned?
Senator, if confirmed as Attorney General of the United States, the pardons, of course, fall under the President. But if asked to look at those cases, I will look at each case and advise on a case-by-case basis, just as I did my entire career as a prosecutor.
You also advise the President on pardons. That's part of your responsibility as Attorney General. And so I'm asking you, do you believe that those who've been convicted of the January 6 riot, violent assaults on our police officers, should be pardoned? That's a simple question.
So, Senator, I have not seen any of those files, of course. If confirmed and if asked to advise the President, I will look at each and every file. But let me be very clear in speaking to you. I condemn any violence on a law enforcement officer in this country.
Senator Whitehouse.
Thank you, Chairman. Welcome, Ms. Bondi.
Thank you, Senator, and thank you for meeting with me. I greatly appreciate that.
It was a pleasure. Ms. Bondi, you were a courtroom prosecutor for a great many years. As a courtroom prosecutor, did you ever have an enemies list?
No, Senator.
And you went on to be Florida's Attorney General. As Florida's Attorney General, did you ever have an enemies list?
No, Senator.
As Florida's Attorney General, you were responsible for hiring into the Florida Department of Attorney General, correct? For hiring into that office while you were Attorney General?
Yes.
Would you
Senator.
have hired someone into the Florida Attorney General's office who you knew had an enemies list?
Senator, to cut to the chase, you're clearly talking about Kash Patel. I don't believe he has an enemies list. He made a quote on TV, which I have not heard. I saw your sign, or Senator Durbin's sign, about Kash. But I know that Kash Patel has had 60 jury trials as a public defender, as a prosecutor. He has great experience in the Intel Department, Department of Defense. I have known Kash, and I believe that Kash is the right person at this time for this job. You'll have the ability to question Mr. Patel.
And I'm questioning you right now
do.
about whether you will enforce an enemies list that he announced publicly on television.
Oh, Senator, I'm sorry. There will never be an enemies list within the Department of Justice.
Thank you. The FBI's, what is the FBI's role in national security and counterterrorism, and how important is that role?
You know, Senator, I believe now more than ever, counterterrorism is so important and vital in our country. We are facing such incredible threats here and abroad. If I'm sure many of you saw former FBI Director Wray's interview on 60 Minutes, he talked about the threats that, frankly, again, I don't have my security clearance, but the threats facing us, Senator, from China right now that are so great.
Given
the
that,
sleeper cells within our country.
Given that importance, is it responsible to call for shutting down the FBI's counterterrorism and national security work? And will you, as Attorney General, impede or shut down the FBI's counterterrorism and national security work?
Senator,
2 questions.
Senator, I believe that national security is vital right now for our country on so many fronts. I could continue to discuss
And the
many
FBI's
others.
role in that?
And the FBI plays a vital role in counterterrorism
Which you
throughout
will
our
or will
world.
not shut down?
I will look at each agency. I have no intention of shutting anything down right now, Senator. I am not in that office yet, and if confirmed, I will look at each individual agency and how it should be managed, but counterterrorism right now in our world is vital.
You have said that Department of Justice prosecutors will be prosecuted in the Trump administration. What Department of Justice prosecutors will be prosecuted and why?
I said that on TV. I said prosecutors will be prosecuted, to finish the quote, if bad. Investigators will be investigated. You know, we all take an oath, Senator, to uphold the law. None of us are above the law.
Under what circumstances will you prosecute journalists for what they write?
I believe in the freedom of speech. Only if anyone commits a crime. It's pretty basic, Senator, with anything, with any victim. And this goes back to my entire career for 18 years as a prosecutor and then 8 years as Florida's Attorney General. You find the facts of the case, you apply the law in good faith, and you treat everyone fairly.
And it would not be appropriate for a prosecutor to start with a name and look for a crime. It's a prosecutor's job to start with a crime and look for a name, correct?
Senator, I think that is the whole problem with the weaponization that we have seen the last 4 years and what's been happening to Donald Trump. They targeted Donald Trump. They went after him, actually starting back in 2016. They targeted his campaign. They have launched countless investigations against him. That will not be the case if I am Attorney General. I will not politicize that office. I will not target people simply because of their political affiliation. Justice will be administered even-handedly throughout this country. Senator, we've got to bring this country back together. We've got to move forward, or we're going to lose our country.
Yeah, I think the concern is that weaponization of the Justice Department may well occur under your tenure. And we want to make sure that that's not the case, that you remain independent, that you remain able to and willing to tell the president no when that's necessary to protect the Constitution and the integrity of the department. So that's where I'm asking these questions. My time has expired. Thank you, Ms. Bondi.
Senator Coons.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Attorney General Bondi, and to your family and supporters. Thank you for your service. And one of the concerns I've raised with you is safeguarding the Department of Justice's independence in the face of some promises on the campaign trail by then candidate Trump that he would use the department to target his political adversaries, or that he might interfere with prosecution. What would you do if your career DOJ prosecutors came to you with a case to prosecute, grounded in?
Senator, if I thought that would happen, I would not be sitting here today. That will not happen, will not happen. Politics have got to be taken out of the system.
I agree with you.
This department has been weaponized for years and years and years,
But let
and
me,
it has
if
to
I
stop.
might, thank you. Let me, if I might, Madam Attorney General, refer you back to Senator Durbin's opening comments about previous attorneys general, our former colleague, Jeff Sessions, Bill Barr. I don't think it's credible to say that it may never happen that the president-elect would direct an unethical or illegal act. I think both of those attorneys general found themselves crosswise with the then president by doing things he didn't welcome or approve of. Just answer the question for me, if you would. I know you may not expect it. I know you wouldn't have accepted this nomination if you thought it possible. But let's imagine that once again, President-elect Trump issues a directive or order to you or to the FBI director that is outside the boundaries of ethics or law. What will you do?
Senator, I will never speak on a hypothetical, especially one saying that the president would do something illegal. What I can tell you is my duty, if confirmed as the Attorney General, will be to the Constitution and the United States of America. And the most important oath, part of that oath that I will take, are the last four words, so help me God.
Given the importance of that oath, I hope you can understand the importance of repeated questions from some of us about the importance of having independence in the Department of Justice. It has a long tradition of independent special prosecutors, especially to handle high-profile or often political cases. If you got credible evidence of a criminal violation by a White House official, including even the president, would you bring in a special prosecutor?
Senator, that's a hypothetical. I can tell you what I do know is special prosecutors have been abused in the past on both sides. We have seen that for many, many years. They have cost the taxpayers countless dollars, countless. And I will look at each situation on a case-by-case basis and consult the appropriate career ethics officials within the department to make that decision.
Attorney General, do you think special counsels need to be confirmed by the Senate?
I will follow the law and I will consult with the appropriate ethics officials regarding the law. Right now, they do not need to be Senate confirmed, of course.
But you did sign an 11th Circuit brief arguing that they should be.
I will follow the law, Senator. That's why I said that.
Understood. But I was just getting to the clarity about the difference between a position you've advocated and what the current law is. Thank you for that. Look, bluntly, to me, refusing to answer a hypothetical when there is clear and concrete previous history raises some concerns for me. I think Chris Wray has done an outstanding job as FBI director at avoiding political pressure. And although he was chosen by President Trump, he's being driven out so that he can be replaced. My perception, I've not yet met with Mr. Patel, by a loyalist who has publicly said he will do what the president asks him. Given that Attorney General Barr was asked to go find evidence of election interference and improprieties, went and looked for the evidence and said, I can't find any, and was then dismissed. I'm just going to ask you one last time. Can you clarify for me that in following ethics and the law, you'd be willing to resign if ordered to do something improper?
Senator, I wouldn't work at a law firm. I wouldn't be a prosecutor. I wouldn't be attorney general. If anyone asked me to do something improper and I felt I had to carry that out, of course I would not do that. That's one of the main things you learn when you're a young prosecutor, is to do the right thing. And I believe that has continued with me throughout my very long career.
But the most important question I had for you today is whether you will be willing and able to stand up to politicization and interference in the Department of Justice. And I look forward to further clarification from you about the specifics of that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Welcome, Ms. Bondi, and to your family.
Thank you.
Thank you for visiting with me in my office. And I have to say, I'm sympathetic always to a former Attorney General, particularly having been one myself. But I am, I have to say also, really troubled, deeply disturbed by some of your responses and non-responses to the question that you've been asked today. You say the right things, that you're going to be the people's lawyer. That's what you have to say to be here. But I believe being the people's lawyer means you have to be able to say no to the President of the United States. You have to speak truth to power. You have to be able to say that Donald Trump lost the 2020 election. You dodged that question when you were asked directly by Senator Durbin. You have to be able to say that January 6th insurrectionists who committed violence shouldn't be pardoned. You have to be able to say that a nominee for the FBI director who says he has an enemy list, and that's just the beginning of what he has said in terms of politicizing, deeply weaponizing the FBI against political opponents, that he shouldn't be the FBI director. You know, we have some history here with your predecessors, Barr, Sessions, and others, who perhaps sincerely, when they sat where you are now, said that they would say no, but they were working with a president that expected them to be his Roy Cohn, his personal attorney. Do you really think that you can avoid the disgrace that they encountered or the repercussions from the White House if you say no to the president? And so my question to you is, can you say no to the President of the United States when he asks you to do something unethical or illegal?
Senator, first, I need to clarify something that you said, that I have to sit up here and say these things. No, I don't. I sit up here and speak the truth. I'm not going to sit up here and say anything that I need to say to get confirmed by this body. I don't have to say anything. I will answer the questions to the best of my ability.
Well,
and
let
honestly,
me ask you, an individual who says that he is going to, quote, come after, end quote, people he alleges, quote, help Joe Biden rig the presidential elections, that he has a list of people who are part of this deep state who should be prosecuted, that he's going to close down the FBI building on his first day in office. Is that a person who appropriately should be the FBI director? Aren't those comments inappropriate? Shouldn't you disavow them and ask him to recant them?
Senator, I am not familiar with all those comments. I have not discussed those comments with Mr. Patel. What I do know
Well,
is
I'm
Mr.
asking
Patel,
you for your view.
Excuse me. What I do know is Mr. Patel was a career prosecutor. He was a career public defender, defending people. And he also has great experience within the intelligence community. What I can sit here and tell you is Mr. Patel, if he works with running the FBI, if he is confirmed, and if I am confirmed, he will follow the law if I am the Attorney General of the United States of America, and I don't believe he would do anything otherwise.
Well, let me just submit that the response that I would have hoped to hear from you is that those comments are inappropriate and that you will ask him to disavow or recant them when he comes before this committee, because they are indeed chilling to fair enforcement and the rule of law. Let me ask you, I have one
go ahead.
more question that I'm going to try to fit into
Sure.
this round. TikTok will be banned unless it is sold because it has become a tool for the Chinese to collect information and do surveillance and endanger our national security. Can you commit that you will enforce that law promptly and effectively? And I ask this question because President Trump's pick for your Solicitor General in the Department of Justice went to the United States Supreme Court arguing that the ban should be delayed. Will you commit to enforce that law on your first day when you are if you are confirmed?
Senator, as I discussed with you during our meeting, that is pending litigation within the Department of Justice.
Well, it's pending litigation, but will you enforce that law?
I can't discuss pending litigation, but I will talk to all the career
Well, again,
prosecutors who are handling the case. Absolutely, Senator. Discuss with them.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Senator Hirano.
Ms. Bondi, your experience as a prosecutor is the kind of thing we would expect to see in a nominee for Attorney General, but I do have questions and concerns about potential conflicts of interest, about whether you will keep DOJ's law enforcement responsibilities independent of the president's political whims, and about whether you will let facts and evidence guide your decisions. So let's start with the importance of facts, which you say is important. Ms. Bondi, we want an Attorney General who bases decisions on facts. So I want to ask you a factual question. Who won the 2020 presidential election?
Joe Biden is the President of the United States.
Ms. Bondi, you know that there is a difference between acknowledging it and, I can say that Donald Trump won the 2024 election. I may not like it, but I can say it. You cannot say who won the 2020 presidential election. Okay. It's disturbing that you can't give voice to that fact. Moving on to DOJ's independence from politics. Ms. Bondi, if you are confirmed as Attorney General, you will take an oath to the Constitution and not to any individual, including the President. To start, I'd like to know whether you agree with some of the statements President-elect Trump made during the election, during the campaign. First, are the felons convicted of breaking into the Capitol on January 6th hostages or patriots, quoting Trump, as President-elect Trump has said repeatedly? Do you agree with his characterization of the felons that I referred to?
I am not familiar with that statement, Senator.
I just familiarized you with that statement. Do you agree with that statement?
I'm not familiar with it, Senator.
No answer. He has also said illegal immigration is poisoning the blood of our nation. He said that in December 2023. Do you agree with that statement?
Senator, I am not familiar with that statement, but what I can tell you is I went to the border a few months ago. I went to Yuma, Arizona, and what I saw at that border was horrific, Senator. It was horrific.
Ms. Bondi,
I went to a rape crisis center.
That is
If I could
not my
finish,
question.
I went to a rape crisis center. Well, I'm not familiar with the statement, but I went to a
to
rape
the
crisis
next-
center.
Let
I
me
met
get to
with
the
Border
important-
Patrol
Can I have?
agents. I'm sure you've been to the
Ms.
border
Bondi,
as well, so
I
you
want to
could
get
answer
to my
that.
next question. So I believe that you responded to a question from Senator Whitehouse, and let me get your response again. you said that the White House, if I'm putting words in your mouth, correct me. Oh, you said that the White House will play no role in investigative or charging decisions in the DOJ. Is that correct?
Senator, what I said is that it is the Department of Justice's decision to determine what cases will be prosecuted.
What role will the White House have in investigative or prosecutorial decisions of the DOJ?
It is the Department of Justice's decision, Senator.
So that sounds to me that you're saying that the White House will not have any kind of role. Meanwhile, though, you have an incoming president who said, I have the absolute right to do what I want to do with the Justice Department. And in fact, President-elect Trump considers the DOJ to be his law firm. I ask you this. If President-elect Trump asks, suggests, or hints that you as Attorney General should investigate one of his proceedings, would you do so?
Discussed is that it is the Attorney General to
I'm very
follow
happy to listen
the
to
law.
your responses under oath, Ms. Bondi. So I think it's really important to us that the Attorney General be independent of the White House. And you have a president-elect who considers the AG's office his law firm. I would like to know whether if the president suggests, hints, asks that you as Attorney General should investigate one of his perceived enemies.
Senator,
you
I
do?
certainly have not heard the president say that. But what I will tell you is 2/3 of Americans have lost faith in the Department of Justice. And it's statements like that, I believe,
Ms.
that make
Bondi.
people continue to lose faith. If I am confirmed as Attorney General, it will be my job
Getting
to
on
not
to my
only
next
keep
question,
America
you're not
safe,
responding.
but restore integrity to that department.
Why don't we
and that's
move
what
on
I
to
plan
something
on
that
doing
you said?
every single day as Attorney General.
On August 25th, 2025, on Fox News, you said, when Republicans prosecutors will be prosecuted, once the investigators will be investigated. Ms. Bondi, is Jack Smith one of those bad prosecutors that you will prosecute as AG?
Senator, you hesitated a bit when I said the bad ones. Every decision
Sometimes
will be
badness
made
in the eyes of the beholder. I'm just asking whether you would consider Jack Smith
Senator,
to be one of the people. How about Liz Cheney?
Senator,
How about Merrick Garland?
I am not going to medicals. No one has been prejudged, or nor will
I
anyone
am
be
asking whether
prejudged if I am
these are the
confirmed.
kind of people, these are in fact the people that you would prosecute. I'm not
Your
getting an answer.
time is up.
Mr. Chairman, I do have some concerns, not so much about you, but what President Trump has said about a desire on his part to go after what he considers to be political adversaries. He's his own words, for instance, says that if he's elected, he'd seek to appoint a special prosecutor to go after Joe Biden. I assume you've had no discussion with President-elect Trump about that?
Absolutely not.
And he...
Nor
has
against
indicated-
Senator Schiff. I'm looking at your next one.
Well, my colleague, Senator Schiff, who I think did an incredibly good job, President Biden had different points, or pardon me, President Trump had different views about that, where he said on a number of occasions that he should be prosecuted, that everybody on the January 6th committee should be prosecuted for their lies and treason. No discussion about that.
No, Senator.
And Liz Cheney also, he's said that she should be prosecuted for lies and treason as well.
We have had no discussions about Liz Cheney.
All right. And you've satisfied me that this is not an agenda you have. President Trump has satisfied me that when he says things that are pretty provocative, he's often serious. And as Senator Cruz wants, I want, and that is to have a Justice Department that is not going after people on the basis of them being political opponents. And my understanding, in listening to your answers to the questions along this line, is that you have no intention of pursuing people on the basis of them being a political opponent.
No one will be prosecuted, investigated because they are a political opponent. That's what we've seen for the last 4 years in this administration.
Well,
People will be prosecuted
okay.
based on the facts and the law and fairly,
All
Senator.
right, that's good.
You
I
have my word.
disagree about the characterization of the past 4 years, but we don't have to discuss that with your assurance that the next 4 years, there'll be no effort on the part of the Justice Department to pursue political adversaries, right?
Every case will be done on a case-by-case basis. No one should be prosecuted
All right,
for
just
political purposes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bondi, for being here today. And I, too, would like to welcome your family and friends who are here.
Thank you.
Appreciated the opportunity to meet yesterday to learn about your priorities and discuss a number of issues that are important to me. But I got to tell you, as I reflected on our conversation yesterday and as I've observed the hearing today, I continue to have significant reservations on your ability to function as a truly independent Attorney General for your friend. Let's say you keep referring to him, your friend, President-elect Trump. So I hope you can address some of these concerns through your responses to my questions here. Now, the first issue area is something that we didn't get a chance to touch on yesterday. So I actually want to follow up on some of Senator Durbin's questions from earlier about the 2020 election. And to be specific, on the day after the 2020 presidential general election, you traveled to Philadelphia to appear alongside President Trump's then attorney, Rudy Giuliani. And together, you falsely asserted that President Trump had, quote, won Pennsylvania in that election. Now, I want to be clear, at that moment, there were still at least 1 million ballots left to be counted in Pennsylvania. Of course, President Biden went on to win the state by more than 80,000 votes. But in the following days, even after the results were clear, you continued to double down on the big lie, promoting falsehoods about election fraud and cheating without offering any actual evidence. And I remember it clearly because I served as California Secretary of State at the time, and I invited anybody associated with the Trump campaign who was making these claims to come forward with evidence of irregularities in the election or massive voter fraud. 4 years later, I still have seen none. So I ask you today, do you have any evidence of election fraud or irregularities?
Senator.
Yes or no? It's a yes or no question.
First, Senator.
Do you have evidence, yes or no?
First, Senator, I'm so sorry about the fires to you and Senator Schiff and what you're going through in your states. I have to say that.
I
And
appreciate
think
that,
all
but
of
my
our,
clock is
I'll
ticking,
answer
and I
your
want to
question. All
hear
of our
your answer.
hearts go out to everyone in California for what you're facing right now. I'm glad you asked the question about Pennsylvania.
It's a yes or no question.
I was
Do
hoping
you have
someone
evidence, yes or
would.
no?
Senator, I was hoping you'd ask the question.
Do you have evidence, yes or no?
I traveled to Pennsylvania.
Do you have the evidence, yes
I traveled,
or no?
Senator, to Pennsylvania.
Okay, you're not answering my question. If you have no evidence to offer, let me ask you this. Will you now retract your previous statements that Trump won Pennsylvania in the 2020 election, yes or no?
Oh, Senator, I traveled to Pennsylvania, and let me tell you what I saw firsthand.
Yes or
no? I didn't talk about California because I was not in California. I talked about
Yes or no? Last time I'm going to ask.
I talked about Pennsylvania because
Mr.
I
Chair,
was there.
I'm going to move on because she's
got a
clearly not
court
answering my
order
questions. And
to
I want to know,
observe.
colleagues, for everybody, members of the committee and everybody watching, that the attorney who stood beside Mr. Giuliani was making very similar statements. And he has since been disbarred from multiple jurisdictions for making these false claims about the 2020 election in court. And like Mr. Giuliani, as you've noted today, you've taken an oath to uphold the Constitution just as an attorney. And now you're asking us to consider you to serve as the chief law enforcement officer in our country. So it's imperative, Ms. Bondi, that you subscribe to facts and evidence and not politically convenient conspiracy theories. Your job will be, your job will be to protect voters and election workers, not to undermine and dox them. Now, I know that earlier you agreed that Joe Biden is in fact president, but many of the president-elect's inner circle continue to spread the big lie about the 2020 election. Then we'll move on to a different topic. 'Cause I know
Senator,
that's one
you were
that you're obviously
speaking.
not comfortable
May
with.
I speak? You cut
When
me
I ask
off
you the
when I
next
was
question, you
speaking.
can speak, and I hope you answer, Ms. Bondi.
Well, I'd
now,
like
when
to
we met
answer
yesterday,
the previous one, Senator.
when we met yesterday,
You pointed your finger at me and
you
said
did not
you were
seem
speaking.
to be familiar
let me answer
with
my question.
the
I'm not going to be
citizenship
bullied by you,
clause, the
Senator
14th
Padilla.
Amendment of the United States of America, which was deeply disappointing.
I guess you
And I'm
didn't want to
hoping you're
hear
more
my
familiar
answer
with it
about
today
Pennsylvania.
after I gave an opportunity to study overnight. So can you tell me and this committee what the citizenship clause of the 14th Amendment says?
Senator, I'm here to answer your questions. I'm not here to do your homework and study for you. If I am confirmed
No,
as
you're
Attorney
the one
General,
asking for a confirmation
hey,
vote,
you
ma'am.
cut me off. Can I please finish?
What does the 14th Amendment say?
Senator, the 14th Amendment, we all know, addresses birthright citizenship. I have been a state prosecutor. I've been a state AG. I look forward to, even given your remarks today, working with you and the people of California if I am confirmed as the 87th Attorney General of the United States of America. I didn't take your homework assignment. I'm sorry. I was preparing for today.
So on the 14th Amendment, now you've testified repeatedly to this committee that you will uphold the laws of this country and defend the Constitution of the United States. Do you believe birthright citizenship is the law of the land, and will you defend it regardless of a child born in the United States, regardless of their parents' immigration status?
Senator, I will study birthright citizenship. I would love to meet with you regarding
Ma'am, you're
birthright
asking us to
citizenship. Can I
continue
answer
to
the
serve as the
question?
Attorney General of the United States, and you still need to study the 14th Amendment of the Constitution? That is not helping me have more confidence in your ability to do this job. Thank you very much. Mr. Chair, I can't wait for the second round.
Same, Senator. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Bondi, as you know, the Supreme Court in Trump versus United States held the president has absolute immunity to commit crimes in certain core areas of the president's responsibility. One of those core areas is the Justice Department. So in a breathtakingly dangerous and irresponsible decision, Justice Roberts and the majority held the president could commit crimes using the Department of Justice and be immune from prosecution. Justice Sotomayor correctly said this new immunity lies about like a loaded weapon. So the fear and the concern we have is that the incoming president will use that loaded weapon, that immunity, to commit crimes through the Department of Justice. And for that reason, it is all the more important that we have an attorney general who has the independence, the strength, the intestinal fortitude to say no to the president when it is necessary. So my first set of questions has to do whether you have the independence to say no when you must say no. And you can say this is hypothetical, but it is not hypothetical. So let me start with one very specific non-hypothetical. The president has said Jack Smith should go to jail. Will you investigate Jack Smith?
Senator, I haven't seen the file. I haven't seen the investigation. I haven't looked at anything. It would be irresponsible of me to make a commitment regarding anything without, you're a long practicing attorney, without looking at a file.
So you would need a factual predicate to open an investigation of Jack Smith, is that right?
Not a summary by you sitting here. Yes, sir.
And not a summary by the president either, right?
Absolutely.
So a summary by the president or his desire to investigate Jack Smith would not be enough for you to open an investigation of Jack Smith, is that right?
I will look at the facts and evidence in any case. And
sitting here,
72%,
sitting here today,
Senator, 72% of Americans
please, I only have 7
lost
minutes.
faith in the Department of Justice.
Sitting here today, are you aware of any factual predicate to investigate Jack Smith? Sitting here today, yes or no?
Senator, I will look at the facts and the circumstances.
You can't
of
answer that
anything that's
question?
brought to me.
You're not a part of the department yet. There's no worry about divulging
I'm sitting
law
here as a
enforcement
nominee.
sensitive information. So just tell us,
I'm
are you
sitting here as
aware,
a nominee.
just tell us, are you aware of a factual predicate to investigate Jack Smith? Yes or no?
Senator, what I'm hearing on the news
Are
is
you aware
horrible.
of a?
Do I know if he committed a crime? I have not looked
You seem reluctant to answer a simple question. Let me ask you a different simple question. The president also wants to jail Liz Cheney. Sitting here today, are you aware of any factual basis to investigate Liz Cheney? Yes or no?
Senator, that's a hypothetical, and I'm not going to answer that
No,
question.
it's not hypothetical. I'm asking you, sitting here today, whether you are aware of a factual predicate to investigate Liz Cheney.
Senator, no one
Based
has
on what
asked
you
me
know.
to investigate Liz Cheney. That is a
The
hypothetical.
president has called for it publicly. You are aware of that, aren't you?
No one has asked me to investigate.
But the president
Liz.
has
We're
called-
also
the
worried about
president-
Liz Cheney,
the
Senator.
president has
You know what
called
we
for
should
this-
be worried about?
Ms. Bondi,
The
please
crime rate
answer
in
my
California
questions.
right now
You are
is
aware,
through the roof.
Ms. Bondi,
Your
my-
robberies
Ms.
are
Bondi,
87%
my
higher
question-
than the national
My question
average.
is this.
That's what I
My
want to be
question is
focused
this.
on, Senator.
Do you have the
if I'm
power to
confirmed
say
as
no to the
Attorney
president?
General.
And what you're suggesting today by your non-answer is you don't have the independence to say no to the president. So let me ask you a different question. It also requires you, if you're going to be a good attorney general, to be able to tell hard truths to the president. So my questions now are, can you tell hard truths to the president? So let me start with an easy truth that you could speak to the president. Can you tell us, can you tell him that Donald Trump lost the 2020 election? Can you say that? Do you have the independence to say that? Do you have the gravitas, the stature, the intestinal fortitude to say, Donald Trump, you lost the 2020 election? Can you tell us that here today?
Senator, what I can tell you is I will never play politics. You're trying to engage me in a gotcha. I
No,
won't
I'm just
do it.
asking you a simple
I
question.
won't play
If you can
politics
speak truth
with any
to
ongoing
power. So let me ask you
investigation,
another.
like you did
let me-
leaking your
let me ask
colleague
you-
Devin Nunes's
if-
memo.
If you can't answer the question, let me ask you a different, what should be a simple truth, not a hard one. Was there massive fraud affecting the result of the 2020 election? Yes or no?
Senator, I'm glad you asked that question. If you'll let me answer what I saw in Pennsylvania.
No, I asked a simple question about massive fraud.
I can only tell you what I saw in Pennsylvania.
I know you want to answer a different question, but my question is, can you tell us whether there was massive fraud affecting the results of the 2020 election? Yes or no? Was there
I
or
can
was there
tell
not?
you what I saw when I went
That's
as an
not my,
advocate
that's
to
not
the
my
campaign.
question. So you can't answer that question. You can't speak that even easy truth to us, let alone to the president. So let me ask you a different question. It will also be important that you give good advice to the president. Are you prepared to advise the president not to pardon people who beat police officers?
Senator, as I said, the pardons are at the direction of the president. We will look and we will advise. I will look at every case on a case.
so you
Let me
look at-
finish. On a case-by-case
Okay,
basis.
okay, good.
And I
let me
abhor violence to police officers.
Follow up with that. So will it be your advice to the president, Mr. President, I know you said you want to issue hundreds of pardons on day one. Will it be your advice to the president? No, Mr. President, I need to go over them on a case-by-case basis. Do not issue blanket pardons. Will that be your advice to the president?
Senator, I have not looked at any of those files. If confirmed, I will look at the files
And
for
will
the
you be able to
pardons, as
do,
well
will
as
you
the
be able to
ongoing
review
investigation.
hundreds of cases on day one?
I will look at every file I am
Of course
asked
you
to
won't.
look
So
at.
will you advise the
Hey,
president?
can I
will
answer
you-
the question?
Well, my question
I
is-
would have plenty of staff. You said, of course you want.
You'll be able to review
Listen, I'm
hundreds
not
of
going to
cases on the first day?
mislead this body nor you.
All right, let me ask another question. You don't want to answer that. Let me ask
You were
another question.
censured by
It will
Congress,
also-
Senator, for
it will
comments just
also-
like this that
it
are
will
so reckless.
It will also be important for you to be able to preserve the records, the evidence of the department. Are you ready to commit that none of the evidence in the January 6th investigation will be destroyed under your watch?
Senator, I will follow the law. I will consult with ethical officials in the
Do you
department.
see any ethical basis to destroy evidence in the January 6th investigation? Then why can't you answer the question? Why can't you say, I commit to this committee, we will never destroy the evidence in the January 6th investigation? Why can't you give this committee and the American people that assurance?
Are you frightened because evidence was destroyed against President Trump that was false? Is that why you're
Why do
frightened
you
now?
have
I can't
difficulty?
believe this is even.
Why do you have difficulty answering that question?
I can't believe
Why
you're
do you have
asking such a
difficulty?
question.
Why do you have difficulty promising to preserve evidence at the Department of Justice. Why is that a difficult question?
I will follow the law.
It shouldn't be a difficult question.
I guess as I reflect on what you've said today, a couple things surprised me. I did not expect you to be as outspoken as you are about Kash Patel. He's been characterized as a professional career defense attorney and a career prosecutor. That's a pretty amazing achievement in his life. But he also has said and done some things which are impossible to understand and justify. For example, are you familiar with something called the QAnon conspiracy?
I have heard of it, but I do not know what it is, but I've heard of it many times, Senator.
So let me tell you what I've learned about it. Its core belief is that a cabal of satanic, cannibalistic child molesters are embedded within our government and are conspiring against President-elect Trump. They asked Mr. Patel about it, and he said, quote, "I agree with a lot that the movement says." End of quote. Does that sound like a good preparation to run the FBI?
Senator, I don't know anything about, I had heard of QAnon, but I've never heard that definition attached to it at all. You're going to have to ask Mr. Patel about those statements.
We will. And I'll tell you, until we get answers to those questions, I don't know many people on this side of the table will give him an unequivocal endorsement. This and his enemies list, what he calls his government gangsters, this is what you expect of justice in America as you've even described it at the table today. So I would say this unequivocal support of Mr. Patel should at least have some reservation until he explains some of these outrageous positions he has taken.
I look forward to hearing his testimony about QAnon in front of this committee.
You will. Let me say another word about January 6th and what happened. We lived through it, many of us. We'll never forget it. To think that the United States of America's Capitol building was desecrated by an insurrectionist mob that came in and did horrible things, particularly to our police force, that keeps you safe as you sit there and keeps us safe every single day. Over 100 of them were attacked by these demonstrators. One, Kenneth Bonowitz, a member of the so-called Proud Boys, another alt-right group, assaulted at least 6 officers, placed one in a chokehold and lifted him up by the neck. Bonowitz injured one officer so severely he had to retire. Kyle Fitzsimmons, convicted for 5 separate assaults against law enforcement, including one that caused a career-ending and life-altering injury to U.S. Capitol Police Sergeant Aquilino Ganell. Can you understand why when Donald Trump says, the day I am inaugurated as president, I will issue a blanket pardon to these, quote, political prisoners? We view this with an outrage on our side. These men and women risk their lives for us every day, and they almost died. Some of them did die in the course of this attack. Why aren't we treating them as such, and why do you have to reserve judgment? Vice President Vance didn't. When he was asked this week, he said that pardon should not be extended to those who were guilty of violence against policemen.
Yeah, and Senator, I do not agree with violence against anyone, but especially police officers. And every time I've been walking through these halls, meeting with all of you, the men and women of the Capitol Police Department are incredible. They do a great job. They deserve to be safe. And I do not agree with violence against any police officer.
I would hope.
I never have, Senator.
You weren't able to answer my question affirmatively earlier, but I would hope that if this moves forward in a positive way on your nomination, you will speak up at some point on behalf of these police officers who are keeping you safe today and your family safe. I yield.
Suggested, Ms. Bondi, by a number of my colleagues that the concern Democrats have is that you are friends with the president. That's not our concern. It's not our concern that you're loyal to the former president. The president has a right to choose people who he believes will be loyal to him. Our concern comes when that loyalty to the president conflicts with your duty, conflicts with the Constitution, conflicts with your oath. And our questions have been designed to try to ascertain what you will do when that inevitable conflict arises. And you may say that you believe that conflict will never come, but every day, week, month, and year of the first Trump administration demonstrated that conflict will come. Jeff Sessions may not have believed it would come to him, it came to him. Bill Barr may not have believed it would come to him, it came to him. It came to everyone. It will come to you. And what you do in that moment will define your attorney generalship, your public service. Everything you've done up to that moment will be judged by what you do in that moment. I would encourage you to talk to Secretary Mattis, someone who had broad respect and has broad respect of Americans on both sides of the aisle, who felt it incumbent on him to leave his post because he could not in good conscience continue to do as he was asked. I would encourage you to talk to Chris Wray, who perhaps, as well as anyone, walked that difficult line, avoiding unnecessary and gratuitous fights with the former president, but at the same time defending his workforce, defending the democracy and our institutions. I would talk to those who have been where you're about to be, because you will surely be faced with that difficult challenge if you are confirmed. Let me turn to